Yu-Gi-Oh Duelist of the Roses, a simple card game turned into a chess-like game that goes over a loose interpretation of the Wars of the Roses. No one can deny that the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise comes up with wacky ideas from time to time, from introducing motorcycles to their card games to changing their iconic card game altogether in something like the Council Monster series. Duelist of the Roses introduces a chess-like way to play the iconic card game. While the concept sounds simple, it is much harder to master. Summoning a monster into battle is one thing, but conquering the unique terrain that each map displays brings a different challenge that strategy lovers will enjoy. The game is played on a 7x7 board, where your deck is commanded by a single creature you, the player, have selected. This leader over time will buff your cards as time goes on, so consistent use is key. However, all the glory doesn't go to your deck leader. Monsters you use on the battlefield also get promoted over time, and they too get their own unique buffs if you choose to make them your deck leader in the future. Rules of engagement are simple. Use whatever tactics necessary to knock your opponent's life down to 0, surround your opponent's deck leader so no further moves or summons can be made on their end, or just obliterate them with good old Exodia.
Exodia! Obliterate!
The overall gameplay should look very familiar to players of the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game. Monster, trap, spells, and ritual cards all appear, and their function is essentially the same from the trading card game. Some minor changes are in effect to accommodate for playing on that 7x7 board, but overall, they still play as you would expect them to. Fusing cards to make new ones is still present from Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories for the PlayStation 1. While frustrating if going in blind, it does make interesting gameplay and strategies when you know what to look for. For my playthrough, I referenced a GameFAQs post to help me navigate the fusion system for my first couple of duels until it made sense to me, or when I was in a tight spot and did not want to screw up a fusion, link down below. Fusing is easy enough. Select which card you want to fuse by pressing up on the D-pad and summon like normal. A cute animation will play and voila, a new monster has been born. Or, you can purposely choose cards that are not compatible for a fusion to get them out of your hand, so then on your next turn, you draw until you are holding 5 cards again. Kind of an overpowered way to dig for cards you are looking for, but I'm not complaining. Better than having to play Pot of Greed for drawing power.
Activate Pot of Greed! This card allows me to draw 2 new cards!
If you're victorious by cornering your opponent or knocking their life points down to 0, you are treated to a Graveyard Roulette. Cards that entered your opponent's graveyard appear in 3 wheels that you have to manually stop. Once stopped, you get a copy of the card shown in a line on the middle row. However, if you match 2 of the same cards, you only get 1 copy of that card. Go figure. If you somehow manage to match a set of 3, then you'll be treated to a bonus rare card. There are tricks to making this happen more frequently, but during my playthrough I never got a 3 in the row, therefore never got that bonus rare card. If you lose the duel, then your loss total ticks up by 1, and you are free to try again, or pull back and grind out a previously defeated duelist in hopes of getting new cards. This all may sound like a lot, but the game does give a very generous tutorial at the start. Everything was covered in pretty good detail, besides the fusion system, but it's enough to get you up and running. Story-wise, the whole plot is based off of the Wars of the Roses, a civil war that took place in the 13 to 1400s around England and France. Why this event in particular? No idea. Maybe they just found 2 random factions that appealed to them that would represent Yugi and Seto. Who knows? But if that is the case, can we use a different conflict in history when we make a sequel? Anyone up for Yu-Gi-Oh! Emu Wars? Regardless of the setting, it is a nice change of pace from the Egyptian setting they use, and a change of scenery is always nice and welcome. So, the question is, what does this have to do with you, the player? Everything, of course. To start the story off, you are summoned by one of the Red Rose's lackeys, a druid named Simon McMorrin. You were summoned from your present time as you were considered a bang-up duelist in the Red Roses, which by the way is Yugi's side, would like the extra help in this war. But can we talk about the freaking audacity that they have to pull me from my modern time with my air conditioning and internet connections into this time where a river is considered an acceptable place to bathe once a year? Well, what's done is done. I guess it's the plague in trading card games for us. But wouldn't you know it, the White Roses, which is Kaiba's side, rolls up and offers the player a choice. Stick with the Red Roses, or team up with the White Roses. Decisions. I went with the right roses. Why? They just didn't summon me without my consent. It's just a matter of principle at this point. You don't just yank someone from their time to help you win a war using a card game. Once my decision was made, Simon was dragged away, and Kaiba gave us our objective for the game: capture 8 red rose cards from different duels around England and France. Get all 8, combine them with our 8 already held white rose cards, and they can send me back in time. Everybody wins. So off I went, terrorizing the countryside by defeating Taya and Tristan, but very quickly hitting my very first roadblock, my Valentine. And this seems to be a common roadblock for players on the White Rose path. See, Mai, known as Lady Marguerite Beaufort, has an insane deck synergy and a very favorable landscape that makes this duel pretty fun. Her harpies and their sisters will constantly be powered up by her using spell cards, or she'll make fusions to summon Harpy's pet dragon. All I can say is good luck. Either you get insanely lucky and can blow by her this first time around, or I hope you really like grinding out Taya and Tristan for cards that can defeat her. Trap cards are your friends in this instance. Now, bear with me for a second while I take you on a detour. When I started off my playthrough, I selected the Fairy King Truesdale deck, having no clue what to choose on my selected deck screen after being summoned by Simon. I was also painfully unaware at the time about the fusion system in play, along with how powerful terrain bonuses were, so I got absolutely demolished by Mai time after time after time after time again. I thought grinding out a few previous duels like Taya would help me, but even then I was finding difficulty in pulling off a win. Was it me? No, couldn't be. The deck's the problem. So after determining that I wasn't the problem, it surely was the deck, I did some digging into the starter decks and realized that your name that you insert at the very beginning of the game after Simon summons you determines the 3 decks you can choose from. Cool, but why? I understand it gives variety for multiple playthroughs, but showing all 17 decks that the game can offer as your starter deck and letting the player choose which deck they want to play would still allow multiple playthroughs using a different deck. Kinda odd that they limit you based on the name you input. I say show them all and let the player choose. So after finding a tool online that would show me what decks would be presented based upon the name I input, I finally found my perfect combination. I went from Damiku to Vamiku to grab the Patrician of Darkness deck. Right off the bat, the synergy was there. Use a zombie and a plant, either one has to have over 1,000 attack, and boom, you got a Pump King, the King of Ghosts. And why am I pointing out this card in particular? Its effect when flipped up and in defense mode. When this card is flipped up and in defense mode, it gives 100 attack points and defense points for any zombie that I control at the start of each turn. Yes, that means it stacks over time. Okay, but why am I still so hyped for the Pumpkin card? Well, there are 5 zombies in this new deck, and obviously each zombie would benefit from this 100-point buff each turn. You can also fuse some cards in this deck to get even more zombies, which just adds to the synergy. You can also get crazy later on and input a code, more on these later, to give you a Pumpkin on its own, which only adds to the synergy of this deck. Combine these powered up zombies with the spell card Yami, which transforms the surrounding 2-space area into dark terrain, which only boosts these zombies more. Bait your opponent into attacking you, drop the Yami, and go ham with your zombies that are only getting stronger with each turn that passes. With a synergistic deck in hand, I was able to blow by Taya and Tristan with no trouble whatsoever, and when it came to Mai, well, she took care of herself. Seeing how the deck functioned and what fusions I had to play at what time turned this game on its head. It was not a complete walk in the park, as I did suffer a few more defeats or was pushed strategically. The game, though, was more enjoyable, with a deck that finally worked well. Now about those codes. This game allows you to input codes on the deck editor screen to give you a certain card. However, don't get too excited, as the developers have implemented a limit to how many times a code can be used. This does do some balancing, as it prevents you from generating 3 powerful monsters you can just slam into your deck. If you want to run multiples, which you can use the code, but then you are stuck trying to grab the extra cards out of a graveyard roulette, or some other method. Unless you are dedicated to the grind and just really love this game, the chances of grabbing that multiple card you want is low. At least for me it was. Since I was running the zombie deck, I came into a problem. No one I encountered on the White Rose path was really running zombies, so I did end up inputting a few codes. Now you might be saying, Mr. Behind the Curve, that's cheating. And to that I say, those red roses dragged me into this conflict without me asking, did you forget that? Because I sure as hell didn't, and I'm getting back any way possible as soon as possible. Let's also consider that I am considered a good duelist in my time. Good enough to be summoned to assist in a frickin' war. Wouldn't a good duelist not visit ye old card shop to pick up what they need in order to beat their opponents? Wouldn't a good duelist know that the deck they picked, based off their name I remind you, needs some new pickups to make it synergize more? Wouldn't a good duelist understand the meta they were playing in? I say yes to all of these, and don't act like it doesn't happen in today's time with any trading card game. Don't hate the player, hate the game. And since I'm considered a good dueler in modern time, I'm just bringing modern tactics onto the battlefield. Anywho, my run continued on, facing off against Mako, Joey, and Shoddy. Gonna be honest here, I didn't feel like grabbing any more footage of these duels because I was steamrolling everyone I encountered. But the steamrolling came to an end when I came up against Yugi's grandpa. Anyone who watched Yu-Gi-Oh should know exactly what kind of deck this old man is running. If you don't know, just get a gander at his deck leader and the rest should fall into place. So, the battle is easy on paper. Prevent Exodia from being summoned, but the map has a labyrinth that protects Solomon. The labyrinth tile is impassable by your deck leader or your monsters, unless you have a monster that can pass through. Luckily, I had such a monster in my deck. Unluckily, I didn't realize my go-to strategy, what I have recently called the Graveyard Smash, would backfire on me so horrendously. You see, I was used to getting 2 Pump Kings out. From there, having 3 more zombies just stand idly by, getting 100 attack and defense each turn. Once they were overpowered, I would send them into battle to do my bidding. But Solomon had not 1, but 2 Just Desert cards. Just Desserts does damage directly to your life point, and that is based off all the monsters on the battlefield. With me having 5 and him having quite a few, the numbers were tremendous, and I could not withstand 2 spell cards. This being my first loss in a while, I fired up the capture card to grab some footage, thinking that from here on out things would be very interesting. And interesting they were. My original theory about Yugi's grandfather was correct. He was going to throw Exodia out as fast as he could. But I had to get around that labyrinth to put some pressure on him. So I challenged him again with my freshly gained knowledge. This time, my goal was to get to the labyrinth and then hopefully draw a Shadow Ghoul, which is a monster that transforms into Wall Shadow if put into a labyrinth. Once it becomes a Shadow Ghoul, it's able to enter and exit a labyrinth whenever it wants, and on turn 8, I drew the card I needed. From here, Wall Shadow put some pressure on him along with some other monsters I sent into battle. It became a cat and mouse game of me chasing down the head of Exodia, finally cornering it, and then finishing it off with Crass Clown. With Yugi's grandfather out of the way, I had to move on to Bakura, and a concept I have yet to speak on, deck points. You see, the developers were pretty smart. They didn't want you to overpower any opponent that you came across, so they implemented the limiting use of codes and this concept of deck points. You can think of it as the strength of your deck. In this game, you can only challenge an opponent if your deck points are lower than theirs. For example, right after my Solomon fight, you see Bakura have a deck point value of 757, while my deck has a deck point value of 926. In this instance, the game would not allow me to challenge Bakura until I lowered my deck point value. As you can imagine, this took some time as I had to remove high value cards and replace them with lower value cards, while ensuring my deck synergy was not affected too much. As long as I could play a Pump King and some zombies, I knew I'd be alright. After way too much time editing my deck, I challenged Bakura. The first fight with Bakura went pretty well, especially since I didn't know the map had crush tiles. These crush tiles do not allow any monster with 1500 attack points to cross over. If they do, they are destroyed. With this in mind, I still navigated the map and altered it with Yami as needed. I was just a few moves from victory when it happened. The dreaded misplay. I'm still haunted looking at this footage. I didn't account for a creature coming up and whacking me the way it did. I was actually speechless and mad at myself for not seeing that obvious lose condition. Oh well, we move on. Still mad at the way I lost to Bakura that first time around, I decided Bakura needed to be humiliated in his loss. I wanted him to tap out. So tap out he did. I challenged him again immediately, but this time I did add some pizzazz and surrounded him on all sides so that he could no longer summon anything or place any magic or trap cards down. A humiliating defeat for a brainless defeat. Seems fair to me. Finally, at this point, I think it's almost done. It's gotta be. I see the last opponent being Yu-Gi-Oh! I fixed my deck up to bring it back up to 934 deck points to match Yugi's 1,206. Ready for multiple attempts to be had, I locked in and tried attempt number 1. I soft locked him at turn 9. My mans did not like something on the field and just gave up. Every time my turn ended, he would instantly pass his turn right back to me. With my Pumpkin in play, I figured I would take Yugi up on his offer and just let the power stack, 100 points a turn. I let this charade go on until I had enough points to destroy his Summon Skull along with the rest of his life points. No idea why I didn't throw Summon Skull in defense mode, but that's not my problem. That was my win condition. Take out the skull and him at the same time. Okay, now finally the game's beaten, right? I'm seeing some end story here from Kaiba. It's got to be the end, right? Wait. There's more? Who the hell is this, Kaiba? You said you knew what you were doing. Who is this Cheesin' Mighty Morphin Power Ranger? And he wants to come fight me? This has got to be it, right? No more tricks. This has to be him, the final boss. And his deck point is 1,891? Sure, why not? This may take a few tries. I beat him in 5 turns. No, seriously, I really did. I was tired of this path, and I was kind of getting tired of the game, so I wanted out. So I chased him around and proceeded to
whack his pee-pee.
And with that, finally, the story concludes. And wouldn't you know it, everything I did for the White Roses, everything I did for you, Seto, was for nothing. Even though the story was based on the Wars of the Roses, the team behind this game didn't want to make an alt history. Kaiba straight up doesn't win in the end, despite our efforts, and kind of just disappears from what I can tell. Gotta give credit here, I was not expecting that sort of ending. With the story wrapped up and the credits rolling, my journey came to an end. While not my favorite take on Yu-Gi-Oh, it was fun to think outside the box when it came to overall duels, my deck positioning, fusions, and terrain types. I started playing the Red Rose path not long after this, and from what I can tell, it's more or less the same content. Not saying it's not worth a playthrough, but I don't think I'm going to go through it this time around. Now, if a remake was ever released in the near future, I would 100% pick it up and experience this all over again. But for now, I think I've had my fill of European history, Yu-Gi-Oh! Edition. If you made it this far, thank you for watching to the end. It does mean a lot to me. This is my first attempt going into, I guess you call it content creation, media production, one of those two. So I really do appreciate it if you made it all the way to the end. If you want to leave a like and a comment, that's cool. If you want to leave me some feedback, that's even better. And if you got nothing, I don't know, tell me what you like about the game or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or maybe something that you want me to explore next time. But until then, this is Behind the Curve, where I am always a step behind, but loving every second of it.